Ex-husband suffered a severe stroke. His girlfriend left him behind to go party on vacation, so I spent the day with him and our son, but then she called me, lying about his health. When I got there, she told me to stay away and said my son was my problem. My ex-husband had a stroke last week, a real one, bad enough that he's slurring, barely lifting his arm, stuck in a hospital bed, looking like someone punched half his body offline. His girlfriend? Gone. Vanished. Off to Mexico for a girls' trip she'd already paid for. That's the kind of person she is. His name's Brandon. We were married 13 years. Divorced 4 years ago. We share a 12-year-old son, Caleb. We split for all the textbook reasons. He wanted freedom. I got tired of being the wife-mom-maid hybrid. He met Tara within 6 months. She's 24. That alone should have told me everything. I was angry for a while. Then I got over it. I didn't care who rubbed sunscreen on him as long as he showed up for Caleb's soccer games and paid what he was supposed to. That was the agreement. Simple. Then he had the stroke. I didn't even hear it from him. The hospital called me because I'm still listed as next of kin for emergencies. One of those things we never updated. Probably because he was too lazy to deal with paperwork. I almost didn't answer the call. I figured it was a bill collector or a spam number. Turns out it was the nurse telling me Brandon had been brought in by ambulance after collapsing at home, alone. Tara wasn't even in the country when it happened. The first thing I did was grab my keys, not because I'm some devoted ex-wife still in love with her baby daddy. I went because my son needed to see for himself what was going on. I didn't want Tara feeding him half-assed updates from a beach lounge while sipping cheap margaritas. We got to the hospital and the man was barely conscious, slurring, eyes barely open, trying to grab a cup of water with the wrong hand. Caleb was rattled. He'd never seen his dad like that. Neither had I. And to be honest, part of me wasn't shocked. Brandon's the kind of man who acted invincible while living like garbage drinking, eating crap, never going to the doctor, ignoring every warning sign. I guess eventually your body cashes the checks your ego writes. So there I am, sitting by this man who used to scream at me for nagging, helping him sip water through a straw while his girlfriend is off partying in Tulum. No one else was there. Not his girlfriend. Not her friends. Not even his own family. He's not close to them anymore. And I know for a fact Tara's the only one with a key to his place. I stayed all day. Not out of pity. Not because I miss him. I stayed because Caleb didn't want to leave. And because, if I'm being honest, I wanted to see it. I wanted to see what happened to a man who left his marriage, his family, everything, for a shiny new life with someone too young to rent a car. Brandon couldn't talk much. His right side is shot. He was trying to say something, but it was all mumbles and vowels. I helped him adjust the blanket. At one point, I changed the TV channel, and he tried to shake his head. I ignored it. I'm not a saint. I'll admit it gave me a weird satisfaction. Then Tara called. That was the best part. She didn't call my phone, obviously. She called Brandon's. I answered because I was the only one in the room. She sounded fake concerned voice, all soft, like she'd just cried for 5 seconds to get the tone right. Said she'd just gotten back from a yoga thing and heard he'd been admitted. Asked how he was doing. I told her he was stable, surrounded by nurses, resting. All technically true. Then I said, I'm headed out soon, you should come by. She thanked me like I was just some friendly hospital employee. What I didn't tell her was that I never left. I stayed. I had my iced coffee. Caleb fell asleep in the chair. Brandon blinked at me while I answered the nurse's questions like I was still his wife. A few hours later, I get a text from Tara. It said, "Hey, thanks for helping out earlier, but please don't go back to the hospital again. I think it's better if you let his actual partner handle things, and your son is your responsibility, not mine. Hope you understand." That text broke something in me. Let's get something straight. I don't owe Tara a damn thing. I didn't show up to take over her life. I showed up because my son's father was barely breathing and someone had to be the adult. Tara telling me to stay away, like I'm some intruder while she's sipping mojitos with her friends and posting bikini photos? Absolutely not. That's when I knew I wasn't going anywhere. Not because I care about Brandon, but because this woman is not about to play grieving girlfriend from a distance while I do all the actual work. She wants to pretend she's his partner? Then she can explain to Caleb why she never showed up when it mattered. Why she ditched his father the second things got hard. Why the last message she sent was about boundaries and her space while I was wiping drool off the man she supposedly loves. As far as I'm concerned, she tapped out the minute she got on that plane. And if she wants to call Brandon hers now, she can deal with what's left of him. But she won't. Because she already told me my son is my problem. Good, because I'll make damn sure she becomes mine. Update 1. I didn't plan on staying. I really didn't. When Tara texted me that day saying, "Stay away, Brandon doesn't need the confusion, and your son is your problem now," I figured that was the last straw. I had proof of what kind of person she was. I thought that was enough to let me walk away and not look back. But she never came back. Not that day, not the next, not even a quick checking-in call to ask if Brandon was still alive. She just went back to posting thirst traps from beach clubs and brunch pics like none of this happened. Like the man she claimed to love wasn't laid up in a hospital bed with half his face sliding down. So, I started showing up. Every morning around 9, with a smoothie for me and a breakfast sandwich for Caleb. He hated the cafeteria food, and the vending machines were broken half the time. Tara wouldn't know that, of course. I didn't call it visiting. I called it doing what needed to be done. Brandon couldn't move much, couldn't speak clearly, and the nurses were stretched thin. He still recognized me, though. The first time I walked in with Caleb, he reached for my hand. His words were garbled, but I heard, "Thank you." Maybe it was habit, maybe it was guilt. Doesn't matter. Caleb didn't ask where Tara was. He noticed, but he didn't ask. I didn't tell him. I just kept bringing him along and talking to the nurses like I belonged there. After all, Tara wasn't there to correct anyone. Not once did she call to ask if Brandon had eaten, or how physical therapy was going, or if he was scared, and you can't ask about love if you're too busy grinding on strangers at pool parties. After 4 days of silence, Tara finally called. I didn't answer. She sent one text. "Are you still showing up there?" I left it on read. Then I called the hospital admin office and added myself as Brandon's secondary emergency contact. No one even questioned it. They probably assumed I still was his wife. I started helping the nurses with his schedule. I made a spreadsheet, printed copies, laminated one. The head nurse thanked me, said they wished more families stepped in like this. I didn't say anything, just smiled and gave Brandon's mom a copy too. By the end of the week, the nurses were calling me Mrs. Carson again. I didn't correct them, neither did Brandon's sister. Tara still hadn't returned. Caleb started calling the hospital Dad's new house and kept asking why it smelled like bleach and soup. I told him hospitals smell like people who get abandoned. Then Tara finally showed up, 11 days after the stroke. She walked in with sunglasses on her head, a bag from the duty-free shop, and an attitude. I was already sitting in the room, feeding Brandon soup while Caleb watched cartoons on my tablet. She froze. Said nothing, just stared at me like she expected me to leap up and storm out. I didn't move. I said, "You're late." She laughed, tried to play it cool, and said she had flight delays. I asked, 11 days of delays? She went outside to talk to a nurse. When she came back in, she was furious. Apparently no one knew who she was. I didn't offer to explain. Caleb asked why she looked mad. I said, maybe she missed her cabana boy. She cornered me in the hallway while Brandon was being repositioned. "You need to leave," she said. "You're confusing him." I told her, "You told me to stay away, so I stayed. Then you stayed away longer. Pick a lane." She started raising her voice. I just told her to go cool off with another piña colada, and maybe a conscience. A nurse came by to check Brandon's IV and asked if everything was okay. I said yes. Tara said nothing. Next day, I came in earlier. I brought Brandon's discharge forms for the short-term rehab facility. Guess whose name wasn't on anything? Tara's. She hadn't even filled out a single emergency contact sheet. The hospital didn't even have her on file because she'd left him there within hours of his stroke. The nurse handed me the clipboard and asked if I'd like to sign as the temporary point of contact until next of kin could be sorted. I said sure, signed it right in front of Tara. She tried to argue, but the nurse shut her down, told her, "Sorry, we only list active caregivers." Active, not absentee, not sipping cocktails in another country. That seemed to sting. Tara texted me later that night, "You're not his wife anymore. Stop acting like you are." I didn't respond, but I screenshotted it, just in case I ever needed to remind the hospital staff of who was really being hostile. Brandon's family has stopped asking about Tara. I think they're embarrassed. Brandon's mom thanked me for stepping in. I just said, I do what I have to for Caleb. Which is true, but if I said I wasn't enjoying watching Tara eat dirt, I'd be lying. She handed me the match. I just lit it slower than she expected. Update 2. I didn't go back to the hospital right away. Not because I didn't want to, if I'm being real. I did, but I needed to sit with what Tara said. Your son is your problem now. That sentence stuck with me more than anything Brandon had ever said during our entire marriage. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. The next few days, I stayed quiet. Let the hospital updates come through the family group chat. Let Tara pretend she was still around. Let Brandon lay in that bed while everyone figured out how to navigate things without her. I didn't reach out, didn't ask how he was doing, and I definitely didn't respond to Tara. She had made herself very clear. But then Caleb asked if we could go see his dad. Just out of nowhere, he looked up from his cereal and said, "I want to see him. I don't care if Tara's there." So I took him. We got to the hospital mid-afternoon. No Tara. No visitors signed in under her name. His room was quiet, lights dimmed, and he was sleeping. Caleb walked over and sat next to the bed like it was totally normal, like it wasn't his father lying there half frozen with drool on his pillow. He just said, "Hi, Dad," and held his hand. I didn't cry, not for Brandon, but something about Caleb staying calm while his world flipped made me sit down too. I wiped his chin, adjusted his blanket, and let the silence sit there for once. That became our new routine. We went back the next day, then the next. Tara never showed. Nurses stopped asking about her. One even said, "It's good he has someone," as she handed me a stack of PT papers. I didn't correct her. After 4 days, I noticed she hadn't posted on Instagram again either. No hospital check-in, no hard week but grateful captions, just silence. So I did what I always do, I assumed the worst and prepared for it. I started keeping notes on Brandon's meds, therapist visits, everything the doctors mentioned. Not because I cared that much, but because someone had to. I asked the nurse if I could be listed as his second emergency contact after his sister. She handed me the clipboard like it was nothing. A week later, Caleb asked why Tara hadn't visited. I didn't sugarcoat it. I said, "She chose not to." He didn't ask anything after that. That weekend, Brandon's sister called and asked if I could meet with his speech therapist since I knew him best. I almost laughed. That's what it came down to. I knew him best. Not Tara, not his family, me. So I did it. I sat there in that little chair while the therapist sounded out vowels with him, while Brandon struggled to move his lips, and all I could think was how I used to hate this man, and now I was the only one still showing up. Later that week, Tara finally messaged me, not to apologize, not to ask how he was doing, just, "Tell Caleb to stop texting me. I can't handle the pressure right now." That was it. I didn't reply. Instead, I told Caleb that Tara was busy. He nodded like he already knew, and maybe he did. Brandon's progress was slow, real slow, but he started responding more when Caleb spoke. He'd blink at the right times, squeeze his hand a little. One time he even tried to say, "home," and Caleb got all excited. When Tara showed up again unannounced, it had been nearly 2 weeks. She walked into the room like she still had a place there, sunglasses on her head, yoga pants, carrying some sad-looking flowers. I didn't say anything, neither did Brandon. She stood by the door, awkward, tried to act warm. "Hi, babe, I missed you." Brandon looked past her at me, then at Caleb. She froze when he didn't respond. The nurse came in, asked Tara who she was. Tara laughed like it was a dumb question. "I'm his girlfriend." The nurse looked at me. I didn't blink. I just said, "She's been gone for 2 weeks. He hasn't seen her since the stroke." Tara stared at me like I'd stabbed her. Maybe I had. Later that day, she tried to talk to me outside, asked why I was trying to replace her. I just shrugged. "You told me to stay away, remember? That our son was my problem. I took your advice." She cursed me out in the parking lot, loud enough for people to turn and stare. I didn't raise my voice once. Just said, "If this is too much for you, imagine how it's been for him." And he still shows up. I went back inside. A few days later, Brandon's sister told me Tara had asked to be added back as emergency contact. The hospital denied her request, said it was being handled internally now. The kicker? Tara sent me one final message. "You win. I'm done with this mess. Congrats." I didn't respond to that either, because it wasn't a win. It was just cleanup. Brandon doesn't need me to love him. I don't. That ship sank long ago. But Caleb needed to see what real commitment looked like, even if it's messy, complicated, and completely undeserved. Now Brandon knows who stayed. And Tara? She can keep running from pressure. I'll keep showing up with my kid, because unlike her, I don't get to pick and choose what counts as my problem. Update 3. It's been a few weeks since Tara told me to stay away, and that my son was my problem. I never responded to that message. I didn't need to. Her silence ever since has told me everything I needed to know. Brandon's condition hasn't changed much. He's still in the rehab center, still mostly nonverbal. He can nod, lift his hand a little, whisper a few sounds if you sit real close and give him time. It's progress, but slow, barely noticeable if you're not keeping track. I'm the only one keeping track. Tara never came back after that one day she flew in and yelled at me outside his room. No text to me, no messages to Caleb. I checked. She blocked both of us after I stopped answering her calls and stopped letting her visit without supervision. I think she was hoping someone would feel guilty enough to chase her down. No one did. The last time she tried reaching Brandon, it was through his mom. I found out because his mom called me asking if it was okay for her to give Tara an update. She sounded tired when she asked, like she already knew what I'd say. I just told her it was up to her, but to remember who's been here every day since this happened, who's made sure Brandon gets what he needs, who's actually taking care of him. She didn't respond, but she never mentioned Tara again after that either. Meanwhile, I've kept bringing Caleb to visit. Not every day, but regularly enough that Brandon's face lights up when he sees him. It's one of the few real reactions he gives. I won't pretend it's always joyful. Sometimes, it's hard. Caleb asked last week if his dad would ever be normal again. I didn't know how to answer. I told him, he's still your dad. He's just learning everything all over again. I didn't tell him that his dad whispered Tara's name once during speech therapy. Just once. It wasn't even clear. It sounded more like ta-ra. But I knew what he meant. The therapist turned to me and asked if he was referring to a friend or family member. I told her it was probably nothing. Maybe he meant Tylenol, maybe he meant tired. Later, I told myself I wasn't lying. It didn't change anything. Brandon doesn't ask about her again. Not with words anyway. Sometimes he looks at me like he's trying to say something, like he's waiting for me to explain what's going on, or maybe where she is. I don't tell him. I never said she was gone for good. I just stopped bringing her up. I removed her photos from the bedside table when the nurses asked if we wanted to decorate. I replaced them with a picture of Caleb from last summer. That was the last photo we took before everything fell apart. I'm the one who manages the appointments now. Speech, PT, OT. I talk to the doctors. I review the meds with the nurse. I've even started handling the insurance calls since Brandon's mom asked me to help and she couldn't keep up. I didn't volunteer, she asked. That's the difference. I didn't ask for this. But I've stepped up, again, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm tired. Not just physically, but mentally. I work. I parent. I sit in hospital chairs on my lunch breaks and pretend this is normal. Then I go home and do homework with Caleb and answer his impossible questions. Why did she leave? Why did Dad choose her? Will she ever come back? I keep it simple. She's not coming back, but we're okay. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing by keeping her out of his life. Maybe if she begged hard enough, I'd consider letting her talk to Caleb, but she hasn't even tried. Not seriously. One blocked message, one tantrum outside the rehab center, one dramatic text telling me to handle my problem. That was it. She ran the second this got hard. I didn't. That's the part I come back to every time I doubt myself. I'm not the villain here. I didn't disappear to party in another country when the man I claimed to love couldn't move his face. I didn't scream at the mother of his child for stepping in. I didn't tell anyone their kid was suddenly their problem. I stepped up. I could have let her take over. I could have stepped back. But I saw what she did when it mattered, and that was enough for me to make my decision. This isn't about wanting Brandon back. I don't. That part of our life is over, and I've accepted it. But he's still Caleb's dad, and I won't let the woman who treated him like luggage pretend like she has any say in this. She's been gone long enough now that even the rehab staff stopped asking about her. She's not in the notes anymore. She's not part of his chart. She's just a name no one says. And honestly, I prefer it that way. Final update. It's been just over a year since Brandon's stroke. He's still alive, still half there. And Tara? She's long gone. No lawsuit, no dramatic exit. She just faded out the same way she came in, fast, loud, and ultimately empty. She called a few times early on, mostly to yell at me, at the hospital staff, at his sister when they wouldn't let her in. One time she called and cried about how no one told her how bad he was doing. I didn't answer after that. I'd already sent her the same voicemail reply 3 times. You told me to stay away. You said he was my problem, so that's what I did. I didn't block her. She just stopped calling. Now Brandon's in a rehab apartment not far from where we live. Still needs help walking, can't talk properly, can't really hold a pen. He has a nurse who stops by 3 times a week, and some personal therapists the hospital assigned. But most days it's me and Caleb who handle it, because no one else shows up consistently. His mother comes once in a while, but she's old and tired. His brother said he couldn't emotionally handle seeing him like that, and his sister moved to another province 6 months ago. So yeah, it's just me, the one he walked out on 5 years ago. I don't do it for him. I do it because my son deserves to not carry the weight of all this alone. That's the part people always twist in their heads, thinking I'm doing it out of some lingering love or guilt or whatever. I'm not. I'm just done letting other people walk away and dump the emotional fallout onto a 12-year-old boy. I manage the pharmacy runs, coordinate the medical stuff, and handle the food deliveries when he's too stubborn to ask for help, but still can't cook properly. I keep the apartment keys. I have access to the medical records. I make sure the right boxes are ticked, but I don't pretend we're friends. We're not. There's no deep forgiveness arc happening here. He's my son's father. That's it. Sometimes Brandon gets enough energy to ask where Tara is. It's not often, maybe once every few months, but it happens. He can barely string the words together, but I can tell. He tries. He stares at his phone and then at me like I'm hiding something. I don't respond. I don't lie. But I don't give him what he wants either. I just say, she hasn't called. The truth is, she didn't care. And now she doesn't have to pretend. The irony is, I don't even hate her anymore. I don't respect her either. But I get it. She didn't sign up for this. Neither did I. The difference is, when things got ugly, she ran. I stayed. And I didn't stay because I'm noble. I stayed because Caleb needed someone to act like a damn adult. Caleb barely mentions her anymore. I think that's the part that stings the most, not for me, but probably for her, if she ever checks in. He asked once if he could send her a message, and I said sure. Wrote up a short text, never got a reply. He never brought her up again after that, didn't even cry, just accepted it like everything else he's had to absorb the past year. He visits Brandon twice a month. I don't push it. If he wants to go, I take him. If he doesn't, I don't make it a thing. I bring snacks, make sure there's clean laundry, and leave when the silence gets too heavy. Sometimes Brandon tries to talk. Most of the time he just stares at the TV or nods off. The rest of the time, I try to live like a person. I've started dating, nothing serious, nothing long-term, but it helps remind me I'm not just someone's shadow anymore. I've stopped apologizing for wanting that. Brandon's family doesn't ask questions anymore. I think they're just relieved someone took over so they didn't have to. They drop off gifts for Caleb on holidays and birthdays, send the occasional check for groceries, but they don't come around. I'm not mad about it. I've stopped expecting people to be better than they are. There's no big redemption here. No justice, no dramatic scene where someone gets what they deserve, just time passing, quietly, unfairly. Every once in a while someone from Brandon's old life pops up, a mutual friend, someone from work. They ask if he's doing better. I say he's stable. They say it's sad what happened. Then they go back to their lives. I don't correct them when they assume Tara is still around. It's not my job to clean up the narrative. And maybe that's the most honest part of this whole mess. Everyone wants a clean story, a villain, a victim, a hero. But life doesn't split that way. Tara was selfish, Brandon was careless, I was bitter, and now we're all just leftovers from a mess no one wants to look at too long. The only thing I care about now is making sure Caleb doesn't walk out of this carrying everyone else's damage. That's the one thing I won't compromise on. If that means showing up for someone who once made me feel invisible, so be it. If it means being the only one who still bothers to knock on his door with a grocery bag, fine. But don't mistake that for softness. I haven't forgiven him. I haven't forgotten what it felt like to sit at home while he posted beach selfies with a girl half his age and told me I was too dramatic to be around. I haven't forgotten what Tara said to me on the phone. Your son is your problem now. And she was right. He is my problem. my responsibility, my heart, and I'll protect him from people like her every time.